Great.
We have at least one more person coming.
Great.
Oh, Dieter. Oh, that's great.
I think we're starting to get those summertime attendance numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Dieter is from the town of Southampton, so that's great.
Oh, awesome. Who did you say that is that's from Southampton?
Dieter von Leisten.
Yeah, I'm excited for tabling this weekend.
Yes.
Can't wait to table and talk about compost.
And there's Linda. Great.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Welcome.
For joining, everybody. So I think we're actually 1 year into the Long Island Organics Council, and we've been meeting every other month since last spring. So thank you for joining. And we have a few of the steering committee members here, Judy and Rachel, and we'll hear from Glenda after that. And I think Joy should be joining us soon as well. And I see we have a few other composting people attending also. So thank you, Paul, for joining. Nancy, Jane. So, okay, I guess we can start with the slides.
Great. Welcome, everyone. I'm about to share my screen. Can you all see it?
Yes.
Yep.
Right. Great.
So today we'll be spotlighting Grounds for Appeal, which is Long Island's first and only so far commercial composting facility on Long Island. And we thought it would make sense to not skip the basics and just do a presentation on the basics of backyard composting so that we can have a little Q&A and see if people have any questions about how to do it properly so we can all be good ambassadors for backyard composting. We're always happy to hear about ideas that other people have for topics. So we'll first start with Rachel Carpitella, and then we'll move on to Glenda, and then we'll do a Q&A session. And then we have some events and updates that are coming up, so please do, hopefully you can stay till the end to hear about all of that, and then we'll talk about the next meeting after that. Next slide. Yeah, so we can do a quick go around. Who would like to go first? Maybe Linda?
Oh, we
me?
could maybe add them, have everyone put their name, location, and their interest in compost in the chat to introduce themselves.
Oh, that's a better idea. Yeah, we'll put it in the chat that way. We don't lose any time. We'll try to finish on time. Thanks, everybody. This is great. Randall composts at home. Nancy.
Recording in progress. All right, I'm good in my
Great.
And if anyone can mute, everyone can mute their audio just for the sake of the presentation.
Yep, and we have Paul from Port Washington, Transition Town, which is great. In past meetings, we've had Claire Brazel from their group present about their community compost. Okay, we have a Sal and not a Mariana interested in composting in Huntington, which is great. Yeah, nice. So we'll talk about that at the end because we have a separate group that's meeting just to hopefully work with the town of Huntington and hopefully some other towns. So we'll talk about that. So next slide. So this is our steering committee, like we introduced before. Judy, myself, Joy, and Rachel. And we should soon be adding some new members. I know last time we had we put out a call for new members, and there are a few people that were interested in joining. So we'll probably be inviting you, Jane. I know you're one of them, to the next meeting. And it just helps us to plan these meetings and make sure everything is, you know, relevant and important to people, and we can get some more work accomplished on composting on Long Island. So our mission is to build a strong network from across Long Island committed to the sustainable management of non-edible organic materials through all scales of composting. So that's including anaerobic digestion and the beneficial use of compost. Oh, and now we have Claire joining us from Port Washington also. Hi, Claire. Okay, so I'll introduce Rachel. Rachel Carpitella is an award-winning sustainability trailblazer with 15 years of experience developing and implementing climate action for municipalities, schools, and businesses. In her role with Sustainable Westchester, Rachel directs the commercial clean heating and cooling campaign, notably securing funding and technical assistance for property owners to evaluate the feasibility of decarbonizing their buildings across 30 municipalities. Rachel previously led the Green Business Partnerships business development to expand membership into new territories and association partnerships. And for 3 years, she served as sustainability leader with Greenberg Nature Center, where she launched a food scrap recycling program for the town of Greenberg and its villages as well. She led a zero waste school initiatives for 3 school districts, organized zero waste events, and spearheaded an intermunicipal composter sale. Rachel began her work in organics as the compost coordinator with Grow NYC, where she collected food scraps at Abington Square Green Market and drove 24,000 pounds, a 24,000 pound truck through 4 of the 5 boroughs. Previous to that, she directed NYPIRG's clean energy community outreach campaigns in the Hudson Valley and on Long Island. Rachel envisioned and co-founded the Long Island Organics Council and advised the Jones Beach Energy and Nature Center. She's board chair of Green Inside and Out, which is my own nonprofit, and she serves on the Town of Babylon Climate Smart Task Force. She lives in West Babylon with her husband James and their children Meadow and Leonardo, where they compost in a cedar 3-bin system. So welcome, Rachel.
Thanks, Beth, for that warm introduction. Only when you hear it aloud from someone else do you go, oh, okay, maybe it was a little long. So I'm really excited to present today, but I have to say, like, I think that I know a lot of people in the room are here because you are composting already. So I'm probably going to go through things fairly quickly. And if there are topics that you would like for me to elaborate on or circle back to, just put a note in the chat or raise your hand or speak, come off mute and just let me know. Let's dive deeper into that. Okay, thanks. So food scraps.
Yeah, I'll stop sharing. Do you need to share your screen, Rachel?
I am sharing my screen. Are you not seeing it?
No.
Oh, it says you are screen sharing. Okay, now you can see my screen?
Yes. Now.
Okay, great. I'm so glad that someone said something. Thank you. What would we do without you? Food scraps to soil, composting in your backyard, indoors, and as a community. I don't think any compost presentation would be complete without starting with the food waste and grow community hierarchy. Initially, we need to start with source reduction, preventing food waste. This starts at the commercial level, the industrial agricultural level. Then we move on to edible food rescue, which I do believe that we all do have some role in community events that we might be a part of. And then home composting, which is the basis of the focus of my presentation today. And then small scale decentralized composting, medium scale locally based, which I I would say is probably where Glenda fits into. Glenda, you can feel free to tell us where you fit into on this, now or during your time. I don't want to speak for your amazing, you're like, go for it. So that's where she fits in right there, medium scale, locally based. And the small scale decentralized, probably heading into that medium scale, right? And then you have centralized composting or anaerobic digestion, which I'll speak a little bit more about what that means. And then mechanical, biological, mixed waste treatment, and then landfill incinerator. So we can see the most preferred to the least preferred from the Institute for Local Self-Reliance. So the science of decomposition. We're talking about organic matter. It's part of the carbon cycle. And you could see in the chat when Beth said, what's your interest in compost? I said, restoring the circular systems of our earth and our community. And that's what inspires me to be a composter. And soil is organic matter, and it flows through life, and it needs to be returned to life so that we have an ecosystem in balance. And when organic matter is instead burned or trapped in a landfill, and then our food is grown with material that is not rich with organic matter and nutrients, we end up worse off for the wear. So that's where we are today, right? And we're trying to change that. So common organic materials, you have food, clothing, textiles, furnishings, paper products, byproducts, animal waste, and yard waste. And you have examples here, but not all of them can go into compost. It depends on what kind of compost we're talking about, right? Backyard compost versus industrial. So what is soil? This is important because compost is a soil amendment. And soil is made up of mineral, nutrients, organic matter, water, and air. And there are different uses for, use, climate, regional, environmental. I'm not sure what I was meaning there. But when you add compost to soil, you improve the soil texture and the soil structure. It improves drainage, moisture retention, nutrition. It includes more aggregates and pores. So you're increasing the benefit to plant life and to animal life and fungi. So the function of organic materials in soil, nutrient availability, like I said, water and aeration and moderation of pH. So it's decomposition is the transfer of energy from dead, excreted, or outgrown organic matter to living things. And here we see the different layers of consumers, the different tiers of consumers, primary, secondary, and tertiary. On the bottom, you can see the organic residue. So when you first start a compost pile, you're first going to see these primary consumers enter your compost pile, then the secondary consumers and the tertiary. And it really is, like I said, like a whole ecosystem. And then, what other animals feed on these animals. And all of these do the work of breaking down organic residue, food scraps to compost. Oxygen's role, I just want to say that there's aerobic digestion, aerobic composting, which includes a lot of oxygen and airflow. And then there's anaerobic or putrefaction, where there is no oxygen included. It almost acts, I like to liken it to like a cow's stomach. It's the interior, it's closed off, and instead methane and hydrogen sulfide are created, and those can then be used to, you can burn that and then, get electricity from that. So it's an important point as far as what kind of composting you're planning on doing. And in the backyard, you want to keep it aerobic. Otherwise, it's going to if you get it a little stinky, that means you've got a little anaerobic situation going on. You need to get some oxygen in there, mix it up. Thermophilic compost, this harkens back to how can we break down PLA or compostable forks and compostable bowls and cups that seem plasticky, but they're plant materials. So when you get to a certain stage of heat, you're able to break down those materials, and that happens within larger piles that are usually have forced air, or in anaerobic composting, but not in your backyard composting. But it is fun in backyard composting to take a thermometer, stick the thermometer in your backyard compost and see what temperatures you're getting to. And it's more so than just fun. It is also important to make sure, if you're applying this to, let's say you're top dressing a garden bed where you have lettuce that you're going to eat shortly, you want to make sure that your compost has at least hit a certain 131 degrees to reduce pathogens. So that's for health and safety. And for anyone that's thinking about doing any composting with any schools, that's something that you want to be aware of, or community composting as well. Decomposition in a compost pile, talking more about the ecosystem here. Here are some color images. Credit to Springhurst Elementary School. When I worked with them on zero waste, these were some images that they had compiled. They did a really nice job with that. Earthworms and red wiggler worms play an important role. And here's a vermicompost bin. This is an indoor composter where you layer food scraps and the worms move through, and the top layer is where you add your greens, and then you move that layer down, and then you put you move one of the bottom ones up, and you add greens to that layer instead, and the worms move through and they eat the food. And it's a really fun thing to do. I had one for years. And that's a great tool for engaging students. Backyard composters are fantastic. This is the earth machine. The earth machine, you open it up, you put food scraps and browns into the top of it, and you stick a pitchfork in there or one of those augers to mix it around. And then you lift up this bottom tab and pull compost out of the bottom. And something that I really like about the earth machine, well, there are a couple of things. So I'm going to get into pros and cons of different backyard composters. So things I like about the earth machine is the size. It's relatively small. I do recommend having a small brown pile next to it. Leaves, you might get like a little wire mesh container to keep your leaves, your browns. Something else that I like about it is that it is connected to the earth, so microorganisms can move into your pile and out of the pile, and it helps with the whole decomposition process. And the third thing that I like about these is they are very inexpensive, they're economically attractive, and they are also easy to set up. So I think they're a great entry backyard composter. The one thing I would say about them is you need to be able to get into, you need to make sure that you do the mixing appropriately, right? And then a 3-bin system. This is what I have in my backyard. You can do this just like this. You could do a 3-bin system out of wood. I have untreated cedar, and then you could do a wire mesh backyard 3-bin system. You can also add an O2, add an aeration pipe underneath it to really speed things up. And the 3-bin system is used where the first bin is your active bin. That's where you're adding your scraps and mixing in browns. And then the next bin is your browns where you're pulling from. And then the last bin is your kind of finished compost, because you need to let your compost cure. Again, that's for health and safety. And it's also for plants. While compost is decomposing, it is both the pH and the ecosystem, all of the microorganisms in there are decomposing. So if you take like active compost and put it onto your vegetable garden, you could burn the roots of your vegetables because of the pH. The microorganisms are going to come in and possibly start munching on your vegetables to too much of a degree because they're in that that active decomposition mode, right? So it's really important to let your compost cure. Typically, the recommendation is like 2 to 3 months. Okay, next slide. A tumbler. Tumblers, the things that oh wait, maybe I should go back to the cons. Cons of 3-bin systems are that you have to build them. They can be a little more expensive, especially with the cost of lumber since the pandemic. And they take up more space. But the pros are that they're really easy to use, they're nice and organized, it makes sure that you have your curing pile, your brown pile, so it really lends itself to a high level of composting. That makes sense. And then the tumbler is a good entry point. I've seen tumblers that have been really well used, where they're turned regularly. And I mean, all of these need attention to some extent, right? But my one con about the tumbler that I need to mention is that it is not connected to the earth. I don't love that. As such, you know, you have to add any water to it. I don't think that there are like holes for rain to get in necessarily. So you need to add that moisture. You need to make sure you're turning it so that it doesn't become putrid. And there's just a higher likelihood of it becoming putrid because it's not connected to the Earth's natural decomposition systems. But the thing that I love about a tumbler is the accessibility, because turning compost with a pitchfork it's not easy work, right? Sometimes it could be wet. You might want to dig down deep into your compost and turn it. So the accessibility of the tumbler is absolutely fantastic. And it's also a compact system. You can get multiple tumblers so that one is your active tumbler where you're adding your greens, and the other tumbler is your curing tumbler. Or they now have tumblers that have multiple sections. I haven't used those, so I really can't comment. Oh wait, I did use one, and I felt the same way about it as the tumbler in general. I'll come back to you if I remember any other feedback on it. And then you've got your standard, one of my best friends who I met at the College of Environmental Science and Forestry, she always says, my mom just had a pile in our backyard. That's how I got into it, the backyard, and so this should not be discounted. This is a great way to compost. You have a pile in your yard, and that's where you throw the food scraps, and then maybe next to it, you just have a pile where you lay it out to cure, right? Keys to success, backyard composting, air. You need to incorporate air through mixing. This is very important. Water. Don't put your compost pile in a super sunny spot. You want to have a little bit of shade for it. Otherwise, it's going to get really hot and dry and kill all your microorganism friends. And the brown to green ratio, which I realized maybe I should have moved that up earlier in the presentation because I've been talking about browns and greens, but here we are at the carbon to nitrogen ratio. So carbon are your brown materials, nitrogen are your green materials. You want about a 3-to-2 ratio. Browns include things like dry leaves, newspaper, napkins, paper towels. Greens include things like grass clippings, vegetables, fruits, greens, and coffee grounds. But you do not want to put meat, dairy, oil, bones, or feces into your backyard compost system. Trust me, I tested it out and it stinks. Even with a very well-maintained backyard composter system where we were measuring the temperature of the system and turning it regularly and everything, it just did not do the trick. So save your nose the offense. How to use compost. As a soil amendment or as a top dressing, vegetable gardens, permaculture gardens, ornamental gardens. Put some in a bag and give it to your family for the holidays. You'll never say, oh, I wish I didn't have this compost. It's black gold. I know, you guys know this already. School compost. Okay, so now I'm just going to go forward from the backyard composting just an inch or two. School composting is a community catalyst. More than 50 schools in Westchester are composting from their cafeteria waste. that's me in the Oscar the Grouch costume, and my friends Ann and Pam, and these, great group of kids through all ages, pre-K through 12, teach us STEAM, green teams, and it led, we then saw it go into zero waste events. We're doing school events at zero waste, and then before you knew it, every community event that had someone in the school, a kid in the school said, "Can you bring your bins to our event, our Earth Day event? Can you bring it to our fall festival? Can you bring it to this event and that event? And oh, at the houses of worship, we're having an event and we need to borrow your bins, your zero waste bins." And sure, we'll bring them on by, no problem. And then composter and rain barrel sales. This is something that the Long Island Organics Council is going to. We want to be able to support municipalities in doing an intermunicipal composter sale. You can see for this year, we had Greenberg, Ossining, and Hastings together on a composter sale. And then it grew into Westchester County support. This is their composted facility where they have school groups come and teach about composting, and community composting. This is a picture from one of the community compost sites at a garden. And then the municipalities composting. I checked it out. There are now over 20 municipalities in Westchester that are doing food scrap recycling, which is the perfect lead into when we throw away food scraps, where is a way? And that's why we have Glenda on today, because Grounds for Appeal could be one of those places where if a community like Huntington or Babylon or Port Washington or the Hamptons Southampton were to, create a municipal food scrap recycling program with a drop-off site or curbside pickup, where is a way? Where are we sending these things? So my contact information really quickly, I think it's at the end of the presentation too with the LIOC stuff, but there's my direct email as well. And I'm glad to pass it back to the team. Thanks for listening.
Great presentation. Thanks, Rachel. So next, I'm going to get up our slides for the next speaker.
Did anyone have any questions for Rachel quickly, and then we'll do like kind of a collective Q&A after?
One question, can we get the presentation? I'd love to get that.
You got it. Yeah, I'll download a PDF and drop it in the chat. How about
Excellent.
that?
We can
Perfect.
also send it via email as a recap for tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yep, we can include it that way too, definitely.
Thank you.
Great. So I'll introduce Glenda. Grounds for Appeal Composting was founded by Glenda Alvarado-Ostrow in her backyard with support from her husband and family. She's always been passionate about the environment and what she could do to have an impact on the world. So as a resident in Wantagh, New York, she saw the need to do something, which led her to start a composting company which would take food scraps and turn it into compost. Her goal is to close the loop on food waste. As a former resident in New York City, she collected electronics from residents in her own building and hauled them away downtown to e-recycling events. She also started composting in her small kitchen in New York City and used the compost for local flower beds. Seeing the lack of composting options in Nassau County, she decided that someone had to do something to help deflect food waste going into landfills. So welcome, Glenda.
Yes, welcome.
Hello, how are you? Well, my presentation is going to be short. All of us want to go and do so many other things that the rest of the evening holds for us. So here we go. Let's see.
Do you have permission to share your screen, or do you need that?
Yeah, I do. I got it.
Yep, you should be good.
Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay. Hold on. Just trying to do. Okay. So here's my information. If anybody wants to go to my website and sign up for the member services. So there we go. Okay. So I started, like it was mentioned before, this company because when I moved to Long Island, I just didn't see anybody starting a company that would go to the residents and collecting their food scraps to door to door. And I was so passionate that I needed to do something and be able to help Long Island residents. And versus me going to have to go to Brooklyn or go to Manhattan and dropping it all off, which defeats the purpose, right? You're driving somewhere else and gas and so forth. So I started in 2019, and now 3 years later, it is monumental what I've had to do on my own. I started to compost food scraps from the residents here in Long Island, in Wantagh, and then I went to coffee shops and started to do as well as the food scraps from the farm, which I am on Bethel Hobbs Farm in Center Reach. And so I would do this manually with a pitchfork and a shovel, and my husband would help me, and we were out there practically for 1.5 years without any machinery whatsoever, and it was brutal, but we did it, and it just felt so good to actually be doing something and not just sitting around hoping somebody else would start a company. So after 1.5 years of doing this manually, I said, there has to be something better that I could do. I need to apply for the DEC registration. And so I started that in September of 2020. After months of excruciating, painstaking planning with the engineers and with the DEC going back and forth telling me this is what you need to do and so forth. So I finally got my approval last year in March. So the day I got it, I felt like I won the lottery. And so that was exciting. And this is a picture of how I started, with a piece of land that had nothing. It was a blank slate. And so the process that I use is an aerated static pile. And I have blowers, pipes, and these pipes blow the air into the piles. So that eliminated the manual turning. And I leave the food scraps on a pile for 6 to 8 weeks. And then I also use a company that I found through my engineer, and they're called We Radiate, and they operate out of Buffalo. And so I use their temperature probes to be able to tell me how the temperature is remotely through any device. And then once it's cooked, right, I remove the pile and then I turn it with a windrow turner. Then I leave it there again for a couple of weeks and sift it, and then magically appears finished compost. So the materials that I allow, or that are allowed by the DEC, are food scraps, leaves, and wood chips. I don't accept grass, manure, or compostable products at this time. So, I'm in a residential area, so I have to be very careful about what I bring in and not offend my neighbors. So these are more pictures of what I started with. These were all weeds, and the the president of the board, since like the land is owned by a church. So they have a board member that decides what happens on the farm. So she basically said to me, you know, there's really nothing that I use back there. It's all weeds and I don't plant there. So I was able to get it all started, and you see me here, all lonely me, chopping up the food scraps. And then I started to lay out a passive static pile. But obviously it was not working. It needed more development. And I decided to get rid of this sandy loam base, and I put in millings, which millings are just the byproduct of asphalt. So that's my, this is my site now, how it looks. I finally got my sifter. Well, first, sorry, I got my skid steer last August after many, many months of waiting with the back of you know, supplies coming in. It was many months in the waiting. So I was extremely happy there when I got it. So this is my milling pad. And then this is my receiving concrete pad, which I just got finished. And so this is where I accept all the food scraps and I mix it. And this is where the food scraps are on an aerated static pile. See the pipes? I have to be very careful. If not, I've crushed many of pipes, and it takes a while again to get them because of, again, the supply has been backed up. And this is my sifter. So the story with this, I had to again, the whole like it was backed up, and my sifter was taken out of Canada in the middle of the night when there were Canadian truckers protesting. And so it made it to me, and I was able to get it onto my site. But pretty much I was scared that it was not going to come for a while longer. So this is what happens with really bad education, really bad taking care of your compost, your food scrap bins at your supermarkets, super centers. This is what came to me a couple of months ago, and it was 27 tons of food scraps filled with glass, bagged fruit, plastic containers, and bagged bread, you know, and the fruits were just filled with stickers. I mean, that was the very least thing that I could, you know, pay attention, but it was just, I was stepping on glass in a pool of it, because this, can you imagine 27 tons being dropped off? And it's just, it was really sad. So I immediately had to get it carted out that night. And, you know, I had to find the company that hauled it to me. But, you know, the hauler was very angry with the kind of program that he had left behind, right? Because he said that he had taught all of these companies how to separate their scraps. But needless to say, this is exactly what happens when a lot of people just don't care what goes into your bins. But even so, you know, with my own clients, my residential clients, I have to continuously send messages, you know, like a friendly reminder, hey, you know, please take the stickers off, take the plastic tags off your fruit, you know, whatever it is. Because I think we're just very accustomed to, hey, you know what, like Rachel said, it's going to go away somewhere, right? And we just don't pay attention to how we dispose of our food scraps. And food scraps, as we all know, are not trash. But when they're treated like trash, this is what happens. And it's really, really sad that something like this happens on a larger scale. So, but yeah, so I pick up from residents if anybody's interested, and from businesses. So that's my information. And that's it.
Great. Thank you so much, Glenda.
Yep.
And now we're going to do a little quick Q&A. I'm going to share my screen. So we can start. Who has questions for Rachel and Glenda?
So Glenda, you pick up all around Suffolk County, pretty much?
So actually, yeah, a lot of my clients are in the North Shore of Nassau and Suffolk. So, and then,
Okay.
so, yeah, but it's really a diverse group. I can go to Nassau and Suffolk.
Okay, that's great.
Do you have clients? Do you have clients in the Hamptons?
That's a little too far for me right now, but hopefully I can get to that.
For we are starting a movement now between various sustainability organizations. I chair the Southampton Town Sustainability Committee with those of the North Fork of Riverhead, Southwold, etc. We're going to have a joint meeting for the Peconic area of what to do with composting. So that's in the offing within the next. That's why this is very timely for me to listen in for the two of you.
That's great to hear. It reminds me of something that the Long Island Organics Council is working on, supporting municipalities in achieving food scrap recycling. And there are some grant opportunities that are out there, which you can pursue with your municipality, or the Long Island Organics Council can help you pursue those grant opportunities. I personally have won grants from the DEC to start food scrap recycling for a town. So, you know, we have a lot of resources compiled to support municipalities in putting forward those applications, as we have successfully done that before.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah, I'll see if I can drop the link in the chat.
I see Claire's hand is up, so I'm just gonna
Yeah.
and say hi, Claire. I
Hello.
heard you had some great progress in Port Washington. You brought one in Michelle.
Yes, we did.
You saw the food scrap drop-off site.
Yep,
Give
we
us the
did.
update.
Yeah. So, well, I actually have a question for Glenda, sort of pursuant to that. Is if we got a town, I'm going to say not say the town, because our town of North Hempstead is 250,000 people, but I'm going to say Port Washington, or a small area drop-off situation, would Glenda be able to handle picking up, I'm going to say, a large, a large quantity, or what's her, what's her, I don't know, weekly quantity that she can pick up, or what's her, I guess, first of all, would she come to Port Washington, which is pretty far from where her farm is? And secondly, like, is there sort of a max of what she can pick up?
So as far as myself going there, I don't have the truck, but I know haulers that would be able to go there. I mean, I'm allowed about 8 tons a week to get that's my weekly cap. But
Do do you have 8 tons now, or you're
Yeah.
low? You do,
No.
you already have it.
I mean, it goes by weekly, right? So every week I can add more. But but the issue is with the municipality waste, it's like taking all of my few residents and really educating them. One, because I don't have a depackager, I don't have a decontaminator machine where, like, for instance, I'm going to give you an example. I don't know if you've visited any other locations, but like one in Staten Island, they have the Tiger, and this machine is hundreds of thousands of dollars, and they can take in anything, and they can just squeeze it out from the food scraps, and out comes a mush of food scraps, clean. I just can't do that. I cannot physically decontaminate hundreds of thousands of pounds manually. There has to be a really well-run program from the get-go, at collection point, at the sign up point, so that all of these people can be educated and be taught, listen, this is what you're going to bring in. Because if they don't get that education, they're just going to drop everything in.
Yeah, no, no, that's sort of a given. Like, that's the part we can control, from where our group can control, that what you would get is fairly clean. I mean, it's going to have a few, whatever the tags, or something that people don't end up taking off, but I get that anyway. But no, it's more of, it's really just okay, so we've collected it, now where does it go? So that would be where what we would be thinking.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
A follow-up question to help Claire, so some of the facilities that the haulers tip at for compost, they don't charge for tipping, because the composter is then making a profit on selling that compost. So I think it's important for anyone who's designing a municipal food scrap recycling program to consider, you need to know what your budget is for hauling, for carting, for tipping. So Glenda, like, are you able to share any figures for, do you charge? And if so, what does that look like?
No, of course. I mean, I do charge, and I visited several facilities where they do charge. They need to make a living, right? We all need to make a living. So, and diesel is super expensive to run these machines. But yes, there is a charge. I, charge $35 a ton. So it's not that much, actually. It actually hurts me to say that, because I tried charging more, and it's really not something that is valued. And so, unfortunately, this is what happens.
Thanks, Glenda. I think the next person with their hand up was Mark, and then after that, Jane.
Yeah, I'll try not to go off the deep end on this. I got to say, Glenda, I met you Saturday at the Peconic Land Trust picnic, and Dieter was there as well. And I'm glad. Once you see some things, you can't unsee them. And the pictures that you just showed of that trash that you got is something I'm never going to forget. The idea of quality control has to be up front. And I think that's really important. Absolutely, the education has to come first. And I know a lot of the DEC programs involve education, outreach, pilot programs, and so on. One other thing too is I got onto a 2-hour call today with, I wish I could remember who it was, but they talked about composting and contracts and a few other things. I'm going to get that recording from them. The Q&A was brilliant, but they've got all different kinds of pickup. They've got centralized drop-offs, they've got pickup at the curb, and how much money they spend for compliance. Of course, the more the municipality spends on pickup at the curb, the more convenient it is, the more compliance you're going to get. So I think we've got a lot of different aspects to look at. I'd just like to say, for all the work that we've done in the last 3 or 4 years on this, we're in the time of everything, the everything of everything. And we have to have little backyard things going on in neighborhoods, community gardens, end of the block neighborhood, municipal grinders, Glenda's. I'd like to see like 3 of your places out here, but not with all the work that was done at the beginning. I know you've learned a lot,
Oh, yes.
right? And it even makes me think that my backyard composting isn't very well done either at this point. So again, education and getting out there, but it's, if you just take residential and split it out over the 7 different places it could go, then you take a restaurant and the 7 different places that could go, and pretty soon you wind up with 600 permutations of all this. But I think it's all got to be done. There's no silver bullet on this for sure.
Great. Thanks, Mark. Definitely a good point. I think our next hand up is Jane, and then I think we'll probably have to close up on the Q&A. Go ahead, Jane.
I have a pretty quick question for you, Glenda. I live right nearby, and I've been composting since I moved into this house nearly 45 years ago, and my compost pile is about 1 inch high. I have too many animals here that take all of my food things and eggshells and everything, kind of use them for food. So the question I have is, how do I get a hold of compost? Do you use all of what you produce right there at the farm, or do you sell some of it?
Sorry, I was going to answer you without unmuting. No, I definitely have some available, so we can talk afterwards if you want.
Oh, definitely. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Glenda, for answering all those questions. I think next we are going to move on with our updates. Oh, and thank you, Rachel. I think she's heading off now. But all right, let's move on to our our updates. Okay. So you might have seen some of our emails. We are actually going to be tabling in person this Saturday, June 11th, from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. We will be out in Southampton / Bridgehampton area. We will be tabling our Organics Council and talking a little bit about compost to everyone, whoever's interested in listening. Beth, who is also at Green Inside and Out, will have her own table there as well, so she'll be co-tabling. And the address is right there in the slide, but we also are sending out emails if you catch it there as well. There will be all types of activities for both children and teens, and things for adults as well. We have there will be rescue animals with Ranger Eric. There will be face painting, dragonfly identification walks. People will be plotting native plants and seeds. There will be art workshops, bath bomb making, and more. And then the Southampton town programs will be there as well, from solar and battery storage, geothermal air source heat pumps, state-of-the-art vehicles.
And a good collection of electric cars at our booth.
Yes, definitely. So yes, that's this Saturday, June 11th. So put in your calendars. Next, we have some other dates to save the date for. So we have, of course, after having Glenda speak today, we decided to have our Grounds for Appeal tour, which we originally had for Compost Awareness Week, but unfortunately was canceled due to rain. So now we have rescheduled it to Saturday, June 18th. So I believe that is next weekend. And The time is to be determined, so just look out for an email from us. We'll be updating with you on that very soon. Rachel had mentioned it earlier in the meeting that we've been working on contacting municipalities to start composting town by town. We've been partnering with other activist groups. So stay tuned as we work on those developments. We are hoping that very soon we will have composting more mainstream on Long Island, and hopefully with the help from people like Glenda, it'll be much more readily available for everybody. Next, we have an in-person presentation at Huntington Public Library on August 9th at 11 a.m. So it will be similar to Rachel's presentation, but a little bit more in depth. And if you know anyone who would be interested in going, or if you're interested, it is August 9th at 11 a.m. at the Huntington Public Library. We will also be hosting a potluck for all of our members beyond the steering committee who would like to meet in person to kind of get out, be social, network in person. And I'm sure it'll be great to just get out there after having all of our online meetings. We haven't really done anything like this yet. So definitely stay tuned. We'll be sending out emails on that. And lastly, we are planning a visit to the Westchester food scrap recycling drop-off site. This is something we're kind of also hoping to implement on Long Island, food scrap recycling drop-off centers. So this is kind of an inspiration and a model for what we hope to do. So stay tuned for that as well. Save the dates, and June 18th is coming up next, and we will be touring Glenda's composting site. And then our next online meeting is August 10th. So thank you, everybody. As always, it's such a pleasure to have see all your faces here. And if you would like to stay in touch, if you're not already in our group, please drop your emails in the chat, and then we can add you to our list to get these updates, because I think I see some new faces here today. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
Yeah, and I
you.
just wanted to reiterate that we would love to work with municipalities. So if any of you are working with your towns, we're available to come and help assist with meetings, because we did actually apply for some grant funding, and we're hoping, we have our fingers crossed that we could actually get some funded staff, so we have some dedicated time to offer to pretty much modeled on what Scarsdale has done, because we had heard about that in one of our recent meetings. Rachel had introduced us to them, and they have a really nice system going where there's bins at the on town property that get picked up and sent to a composting facility. So it would be great if we could work with some Long Island towns to do that. Get something going here. So I'm looking at North Hempstead, Riverhead, Huntington. We have a little committee that formed. So anyone that's interested in that, Sal, I know you live in Huntington. So we have a few folks from Gateway Gardens. I don't see them on the meeting today, but Melissa Young joined us. So hopefully we can get something going along those lines and increase what's happening here.
We need more land too.
Yeah, we need
Yes.
more land. It's actually interesting. I was listening to this, this ILSR webinar today that was mentioned in the chat. And the one thing they said about land is that, because there's the risk that developers want to take whatever land it is, even if it was commercial or it's yucky, it's disgusting, it's whatever it is, they're going to want to build an apartment building or something. And, they just said, once it's gone, it's gone. I mean, once it's a building, it's never coming back. So even if it's the most blighted property, you just, you want to save it somehow, with something. So the land part is really a problem.
Another thing that we're leading into right now is Kara Hahn had gotten an inventory. She's our Suffolk County legislator over there, and picked up an inventory, of all the What do they call them? That they're not abandoned. They're orphan parks, I think they call them. They're under an acre. And she's very interested in turning these, and we've talked to Al Krupski about this in the last week or so, about turning them into community compost sites. So there's another opportunity for us too.
I thought she said community gardens.
Yeah, community gardens. Yeah, well, that, hopefully that would include compost. Yes.
I could lead to that. That's true.
Absolutely. Great. Great. I'm excited for all these next steps that we're taking. I really feel like we're, you know, spearheading forward.
Yeah, this is really nice. Actually, I should just acknowledge that Andrew Barrios Morgan is on the call, and he said he's the intern for Carahan. So she's awesome. We love her.
Wonderful. Yes.
We have some good legislators that really get it. I know in Port Washington too, Claire, you've, you know, introduced the ideas of composting to your local officials. So keep up the good work.
Yeah, and that's what it is. It's introducing, but you know, it really always comes down to money. It's the budget. It's the, you know, which I guess will be a future conversation, is how to make it, you know, the will is there, but
Yeah, which is really exciting
get
that
the money.
the DEC grant now it's on a rolling basis through 2024. So I dropped the link in the chat, but I guess, you know, if we do a follow-up email, Judy, maybe we can include the information on that too.
Yeah.
So if we all work together, I mean, the municipality has to be the one to apply for the grant, but then they can work with a community organization. So as a partner. So
Oh,
we'll
really?
see.
Is that the 50/50 grant though? Is that the one that's like, that has 50% has to come from the town and 50% is DEC, or that's something else?
That's something else.
Oh, that's something else.
Yeah, I hadn't heard of that.
Yeah,
Oh.
the DEC grants are 50/50.
That's right.
Outside of that, I don't know. We're
Maybe
also
you're right. Okay.
yeah, but there are other grants. I mean, there are other grant systems out there for monies. The EPA just announced too that they're going to be doing they have started doing with the infrastructure bill a $55 million a year for the next 10 years into infrastructure to include, and of course they're pushing food waste, food scraps, vegetative organic resources now, and for equipment. So if you needed a windrow turner, that would be a good place to start. They're also talking about 40, not just 35 or 40% going to disadvantaged communities, as the DEC and the CLCPA has already announced, but EPA is talking 40 to 50% to go to disadvantaged communities. And they're also kicking around a federal food scrap law as well.
Great. Wow. I'm in awe of how much, you know, how many resources we are sharing with each other, and the fact that we are coming so far as a group, and on Long Island in general. So much is happening, and I feel that, you know, we're getting somewhere. We're finally starting to get somewhere. So great. Hope to see you all this Saturday, and hopefully next Saturday as well.
The next meeting is August 10th, I believe.
Okay, I have to go. Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, Beth. Bye, Judy. Bye, Glenda.
Bye, Claire.
Bye.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Take care.
Have a
Thanks,
great
Glenda.
night.
Bye.
Hi. Thank you.
Beth, you got 2 minutes, Beth?
Sure.
Yeah, I just realized that North Hempstead, Suffolk County certainly is represented by any one of us, and Southampton are all silver certificate with the DEC. I'm just curious, out of those three, how many have gone after the Section 5 or whatever it is in the climate smart communities to pull in the points for this? I know that's what we're driving for in Riverhead and Southold right now. We're going hog wild because we got our first 80 points for electricity, but we didn't spend any time on the rest of the climate smart community list. But that's what we're doing this year. So I'm just wondering, I know I can pull, it's going to take some time, but I can pull all the documentation that the silver communities have presented in order to be certified. So I can check, but it'd be easier to ask the three people in the room, you know, what they've done with the vegetative organics as part of the solid waste portion of the climate smart Communities program.
Interesting. Yes, I don't know. So that's a good thing to find out. And Sarah Orrell might also know. She's the Climate Smart Communities Coordinator for Long
Yeah,
Island.
she pushed me over to Andrew Mannett right away. So,
Okay.
but
Yeah,
he's more the NYSERDA guy, but he's also helping with the portals, getting the portals fed with the documentation that's needed for support to the points.
Right, to collect the data. Okay,
Yeah.
I could try and follow up with them. I mean, I know Andrew. I worked with him for 12 years.
There you go.
So,
Yeah, he might have some central easy place to look because I've got to poke through, and drilled. I can do it. I mean, and then sifting through all their documentation to see which was, which one was, the LED lighting and which ones was the boilers for the town hall. It'd be easier just to know if they did any organics work already. And then what I was hoping, and I started the conversation with Dieter, was to get the 5 East End towns, the Peconic bioregion people together. Just the external green teams first, Tim Pertel and Lena Tabori, East Hampton, Dieter, and then Southold doesn't have one yet, so we're advertising like crazy to get an external green team for them, and then our Riverhead group, and I would like to see us work then to get into the local planning units, because we're meeting with Jim Bunchick on it looks like next Tuesday. We've met with him for 2 or 3 years now, and trying to get them to do a municipal green plus brown program, which would be huge. One of the other things we've got to talk about is anaerobic digesters. It's it's a very large discussion, and we're going through it with the town Riverhead right now. They kind of squashed it, so we don't want them to squash it completely, because I don't know, and we talked about what are you doing with the stuff when you're done with it. The compost, when are you going to get rid of it? So I think I'd like to see us a step or two ahead, and not just build it and they will come. It's just a bad business model. So if we've got 3,000 yards of really good compost, what are we going to do with it? So I want to project past that and figure out where it's going to go first.
yeah, I mean, we could always see if we can get another update on those anaerobic digester projects for our upcoming meetings too. Because I know, I've spoken to Mike Gianco and Mark Lembo about their project, and he was very hopeful and positive about the direction it was going. But then I think after that discussion the town didn't provide the permit that they needed or something like that.
Well,
So
they put it on the list of prohibited uses up at FCAL. So we're going back in there. I've got the letter up right now. I'll send it to you after we get it out to the civics. And we're talking about smaller units instead of a big giant unit. Might be an option for us here in the island, because we can't find 10 acres of town land to put one on. That's another thing, 8 or 10 acres. We just don't have it. So that discussion has been raging for weeks, but not to discount it, not just to say, oh, we're never going to do that. That's what we want to make sure that happens. The technology is going to change. Go ahead.
But Brookhaven's is going through, right?
They've started already.
Yeah.
Yeah, they dug. Yeah, they dug the hole. They dug the hole. Yeah.
I see.
But they're talking about 600 tons a day.
that's the one in Yaphank, right?
Yeah, it's a lot.
American Organics.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tom.
And they're not. Oh, I'm sorry, Judy. Go ahead.
So sorry. I guess we should stop recording now. I just realized.
Oh no. No, we can sell this.